The charts compare the percentages of the traveling reasons and the travel issues in a particular year in the US. It is clear that moving between workplace and home has the largest proportion of the traveling reasons. We can also see that the key issue for the traveling public is the price of travel. Looking at the first bar chart in more detail, the percentages of Americans going out for social recreation and shopping are 10% and 16%, respectively. By contrast, working travel is by far the most popular reason of the US people, with nearly half of the US population. Nearly one-fifth of Americans travel because of personal reasons, whereas only 6% of them visit friends relatives. It can be seen that more than one-third of the US population care about the issue of traveling price. While the proportions of Americans having concerns about the traffic congestion on motorway and the aggressive attitude of motorists are 14% and 17% respectively, the figure for safety concerns is slightly higher, at 19%. Finally, the figure for the concern about access to public transport is much lower, at 8% and only at 6% about space for pedestrians. 196 words. The bar chart illustrates why American people chose to travel, and the pie chart demonstrates the problems they concerned about most on public transport in 2009. It is clear that commuting from work was the biggest contribution to travel, with 49% in 2009. People who went traveling due to individual reasons and who were keen on shopping accounted for 35%, with 19% and 16% respectively. However, interaction with friends and relatives only accounted for 10%, and social and recreational activities took up only 6%, which was the lowest figure in the chart. As for main issues, the top two concerns people had in 2009 were related to price and safety, with over half among all the problems. The proportions of them were 36% and 19% individually, while other issues accounted for a relative small part. 17% of problems were led by irate drivers, and traffic jams in highways could explain 14% of main issues. The percentage for the availability of public transport in the room for walkers were lower than 10%, with 8% and 6% respectively. It is noticeable that commuting and traveling price both led dominant roles in explanation for traveling reasons and in issues relating to public transport, respectively. The two charts illustrates the reasons for traveling and the main concerns that Americans had regarding traveling in 2009. It can be clearly seen that the main reason for traveling in US in 2009 was to commute, and the least to visit family or friends. Moreover, the main concern was the cost of traveling and the least the space for pedestrian. Analyzing the first bar chart from 2009, traveling for work and home represented the highest, 49% of the traveling. While traveling for social recreations, shopping and personal reasons were between 10% to 19%. However, traveling for visiting family and friends were only 6% of the reasons. The pie chart shows the concerns that people had due to traveling in US in 2009. The cost of traveling was the main issue and represented 36% of the concerns. The other problems that travelers were concerned were safety concerns, aggressive drivers and the traffic congestion, which represented between 14% to 19%. However, travelers worried less about accessing the public transportation and space for pedestrian, which were only 9%, respectively 6% of their concerns. The bar chart illustrates the percentile comparison between 5 different causes to travel in US commuter at their various destinations. Pie chart elaborates the key problems for journeying public in US in 2009. Overall, the main cause of passengers to travel in America was to and from work, and the key issue for traveling public was the price of travel in 2009. The first chart shows that the majority of commuters preferred the reason to travel in US was to and from work, which was the highest ratio, 90% compared to all other reasons to travel. Personal reasons scored 19% and stood second as compared to shopping, which was 16%. Similarly, social remained second last reason as 10%, while visit friend was the very last to travel in US. By the side of pie chart, the core issue faced by commuters to travel in US was price of travel in public, credited 36%, which remained the most popular problem in contrast to others. Safety and concerns was the 19%, followed by aggressive driver having 17%. In case of highway congestion and access to public transport, American had reported their problems to travel were 14 and 8% respectively. Space for pedestrians was accounted least as 6%. Overall, the bar chart illustrates reasons by the American passengers for travel, and the pie chart demonstrates the main issues for traveling public in the USA in 2009. We can infer from the bar chart that the biggest portion of American passengers travel for work reasons, nearly half of USA population. On contrast, the lowest proportion is for visiting friends or relatives at 6%. On the other hand, it shows about a third of American passengers travel for individual cases with 19%, while shopping and social reason like recreation come as follow 16% and 10% in 2009. The pie chart shows main issues for traveling public in USA in 2009. It points out that the main two issues are the price of travel with 36% and the safety concerns with 19%. While issues like space for pedestrian, for example room for walkers, and access to the public transport counted the lowest proportions with 6%, 8% respectively. Moreover, aggressive drivers counted 17% and highway congestion slightly lower with 14%. At the end, we can conclude that work and price of travel are the biggest reason and concerning for traveling for American passengers in 2009. The bar chart illustrates 5 reasons for traveling, and the pie chart shows the main ideas what people concern about in the year 2009. It is clear that most people who traveled is because of the case of business. We can also see that price of travel is the significant problem of traveler in America. According to the bar chart, almost half amount of Americans travel around as they were working, with 49% of population. There are other reasons for travel include 19% of personal reason, 16% of shopping, 10% of social or recreation, while a mere 6% of people visit their friends or relatives. Look at the pie chart, we can see that the majority of people care about is the price of travel, with 36% of Americans. There are 19% of people concerned about safety, 17% of people care about the aggressive drivers, while only 6% of people concern about the space of pedestrians. The graph reveals 6 reasons behind American travelings in 2009 and the pie chart illustrates 6 major problems for public commutes in the same period. It is noticeable that the majority of Americans traveled for work. Also, public traveling caused people in America face the problems of travel price most of the time. In 2009, the proportion of Americans going to work and vice versa stood at 49%, nearly eightfold bigger than that of those paying friends or relatives a visit. Meanwhile, people in America commuted for social and recreation reasons stood at 10%, compared to 16% of Americans going out for shopping. In 2009, price of travel made up the largest portion of major issues for public travels 36%, while the percentage of American having issues with promenade space was least pronounced 6%. Traveling public had raised some safety concerns among American society as the proportion of this issues accounted for 19%, the second biggest issue. Problems with aggressive drivers and highway congestion, on the other hand, made up the similar percentages 17% as opposed to 14%. The bar chart and pie chart give information about the 5 reasons why people traveled for and the 6 main issues the commuters dealt with while they traveled with public transportation system in the US in the year 2009. It is noticeable that the main reason people had to travel was because of work. Moreover, people found the price of travel as the main issue when they opted for public transports in the given year. Looking at the bar chart more closely, 49% of people traveled due to work. It follows with traveling for personal reasons 19% and shopping 16%. By contrast, there were only 16% of people who traveled based on social reasons, as well as visiting friends and family. Moving on to the pie chart, more than a quarter 36% of commuters found the price of public transports were expensive, while 19% were out of safety concerns and 17% experienced aggressive behavior from drivers. Highway congestions, as well as the ease to access to public transport and space for pedestrians, shared the same proportion of concerns, with 14% of respondents found that as their main issues. The two charts describes 5 reasons for traveling by the Americans and 7 common public transportation problems they encountered in the year 2009 overall. Most Americans travels mainly due to their job while the cost of public transportation is their biggest concern. In details, 49% of Americans travel due to work. Purposes, personal reason came in second with 19% and 16% account for shopping purposes while travels made for social recreation and visiting of friends and family sits at the bottom too with 10% and 6% respectively. On the other hand, American traveler during 2009 encountered 5 major problems related to the use of public transportation, mainly the cost of public transportation. With 36% of Americans having trouble with the price, followed by safety concerns with 19% and 17% complaints on aggressive behavior of drivers. However, few commuters complains on highway congestion with 14%, accessibility of transportal with 8% and pedestrian space being the least concern of public traveler with only 6%. The two charts illustrate why people traveled in America in 2009 and what were the main problems they experienced during their travels. Overall, among all of the reasons that US residents traveled for in 2009, commuting to and from work was the biggest reason, but the high expenditure needed for travel was the main concern they faced. Looking at the bar chart in more detail, about half of the US people traveled due to their work 49%, whereas merely 6% for visiting friends and family. 10% of asked people traveled for entertainment, social communication and recreational activities. Other different reasons and shopping made up 19% and 16% respectively. As regards to the pie chart, the main difficulty was the high cost of travel, which made up 36% of all problems, in addition to safety issues and the bad behavior of some drivers accounted for 19% and 17% respectively. Some of surveyed people, about 14%, found problems with the highway congestion. Finally, only 8% and 6% of US travelers encountered problems with accessibility at public transport and walking on foot. The pie charts compare the percentage of various factors that influenced quality of work life at workplace in India both before and after 2000. Most strikingly, salary remained the highest influential component in determining quality of work people enjoyed in both the time periods. It is apparent from the first pie chart, a lion's share 80% of quality of workplace was ensured by salary before 2000. All the other components, contrasting lie, accounted least percentages, making a combined figure of 20%, although salary remained to be the prominent factor. Showcasing the quality of work environment after 2000, there witnessed an increase in the percentage of all other components except relationship with coworkers, which actually declined by almost 2%. Interestingly, career planning has given much importance after 2000, which evident in its percentage 20%, that is 4 times the proportion before 2000. In conclusion, the percentage of all components showed an increase after 2000 except salary and relationship with coworkers. The bar chart above gives information about reasons why Americans choose to travel, and the pie chart above shows about the main concerns issues for traveling public. The most prevalent reason for Americans to travel is to commute, and it took almost a half of the total percentage. In the other side, Americans thought that traveling cost is their main concern regarding public transportation. Looking back at the bar chart above, most Americans whose travel to commute took 49%. Meanwhile, Americans whose travel for personal reasons and for shopping has a slight difference, it took 19% and 16% respectively. Moreover, the least reasons to travel by Americans is for social or recreation purpose and to visit friends or relatives. The first mentioned got 10% and the second mentioned has the lowest percentage, namely 6%. From the play chart above, the main concern for traveling public by Americans is the travel cost, and it has 36%. Another problems faced by Americans whose traveling public is regarding safety concern, aggressive drivers, and highway congestion. 3 reasons aforementioned has 19%, 17%, and 14% respectively. Meanwhile, issues which is considered as not disturbing for Americans is access to public transport, which has 8%, and space for pedestrians has the lowest percentage, namely 6%.